Seniors, stop eating these 5 foods. They are destroying your leg strength. Take advice from old people. Have you ever felt your legs growing weaker, heavier, or more unsteady as the years go by? Maybe climbing stairs leaves you winded, walks feel like a chore, or standing for too long makes your legs ache. It's easy to think this is just aging, something you have to accept. But what if I told you that your leg strength isn't just slipping away because of time? What if the real culprit is hiding on your plate? The truth is, certain everyday foods could be silently draining your muscles, stiffening your joints, and making movement harder than it should be. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize it's happening until simple tasks become a struggle. Today, I'm revealing 5 common foods that could be robbing you of strength, balance, and independence. But more importantly, I'll show you simple, powerful changes you can make right now to rebuild your strength, move with confidence, and protect your freedom for years to come. Before we begin, take a second to like this video. It helps spread this important message. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tip on aging well. Now, let's dive in. 1. Processed sugar, the silent muscle killer. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And yet, in the modern world, many unknowingly bring suffering upon themselves, not through fate or misfortune, but through the very choices they make at the dinner table. Sugar, once a rare delight, has become a silent master, ruling over the bodies and minds of millions. It was not always this way. The Cherokee people, like many indigenous tribes, found sweetness in nature, in ripe berries, in the sap of trees. But they consumed it with reverence, understanding that too much of anything, even a pleasure, becomes a poison. Contrast that with today's abundance, where a single meal can contain more sugar than an entire week's diet of our ancestors. And yet, what has this excess given us? Swollen joints, aching bones, minds dulled by fatigue. I knew a man named Walter, a kind-hearted neighbor who had lived on my street for decades. He was in his 70s, a retired schoolteacher who used to have a presence that commanded attention, a man who stood tall even as the years added lines to his face. But over time something changed. His walks became shorter, his voice, once full of wit and laughter, grew tired. He began declining invitations to our Sunday gatherings, making quiet excuses about feeling worn down. It wasn't an illness that stole his vitality. It was a slow, creeping decline, a silent thief that took more than it gave. One afternoon I visited him. He was sitting on his porch, a half-eaten cinnamon roll in hand, watching the world pass by. "It's funny," he said, forcing a chuckle. "I used to run marathons. Now, I barely make it to the mailbox without needing a break." He gestured to his legs. "They feel like they don't belong to me anymore." I asked about his diet. The answer was all too common. Pastries in the morning, sodas in the afternoon, ice cream at night. He'd convinced himself that it was a harmless indulgence, a reward for years of hard work. But the reality was crueler. His energy spikes and crashes weren't just passing discomforts. They had weakened his muscles, stolen his balance, and inflamed his joints. Sugar had made him a prisoner in his own body. It took a bad fall, one that left him in the hospital with a fractured hip, for him to finally understand what had been happening. Lying in that hospital bed, he told me he wished he had listened sooner. I spent years treating food like it was just fuel, never thinking it could be the very thing holding me back. With physical therapy, he regained some strength, but the damage was done. The man who once ran races now used a cane, his steps careful, his movements hesitant. Walter isn't alone. So many people wake up one day realizing that their legs don't move the way they used to, that their once strong hands shake as they reach for a cup of coffee, that simple joys, walking without pain, standing for longer than a few minutes, have become privileges instead of expectations. And for what? A moment's sweetness that fades faster than it arrives, leaving only weakness in its wake. If you're reading this, don't let Walter's story become yours. Don't wait until a fall, a diagnosis, or a moment of regret forces you to see the truth. Look at what's on your plate today, at the choices you make. Because your strength, your independence, your very freedom to move as you please, it all begins with what you consume. What do you think? Have you noticed how certain foods affect your energy, your strength, your ability to enjoy life? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's talk about the small changes that can make the biggest difference. 2. Deep-fried and fast foods, the hidden enemy of your joints. The Greek philosopher Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, once said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." But in today's world, what we eat has become more of a slow poison than a cure. I remember a time when food was real, when meals were made in kitchens not pulled from drive-through windows. We cooked with our hands using ingredients we could pronounce. But somewhere along the way we traded nourishment for convenience, flavor for addiction. And now I see the consequences all around me. Aching joints, swollen feet, bodies weighed down not just by age, but by what they've been fed for decades. I had a friend named Sam, a man who lived by routine. Every morning he'd stop at the same fast food restaurant for a sausage biscuit. Lunch was no different. Fried chicken, a side of fries, and a large soda. He laughed it off when his doctor warned him about his cholesterol, saying, "I've been eating this way for years, it hasn't killed me yet." But the body keeps score, and one day it caught up with him. It started with knee pain, just a dull ache at first, something he thought was normal for a man in his 70s. Then came the swelling, his feet, his hands, his legs. His morning walks grew shorter until he stopped taking them altogether. "I just don't have the strength," he admitted one afternoon, sitting heavily on his porch, rubbing his knee with a grimace. "Feels like my body's turning against me." But it wasn't his body that betrayed him. It was years of trans fats stiffening his joints, processed oils clogging his blood vessels, and excess weight pressing down on bones that were slowly being robbed of their strength. The man who once moved with ease now struggled to stand up from his chair, and yet, even as his doctor diagnosed him with arthritis, even as they warned him that his heart was at risk, he found it hard to change. "What else am I supposed to eat?" he asked. "Cooking takes too much time. Fast food is just easier." Easier, yes, but at what cost? One evening after another painful day, he called me. "You were right," he said, his voice quiet. "I should have listened sooner." He had been reading about inflammation, about how fast food was feeding his pain instead of fueling his body. He started making small changes. Grilled chicken instead of fried, home-cooked meals a few nights a week. And though the damage couldn't be undone overnight, he began to feel a difference. Less stiffness in the morning, a little more energy in the afternoon, a bit more hope. I tell you this because I see so many people like Sam, people who believe that slowing down, hurting, and feeling tired all the time is just a part of aging. But it's not just the years, it's the choices. The food on your plate today shapes the way you move tomorrow. And the thing about fast food, it may be quick, but its effects linger. So I ask you, have you noticed how certain foods affect the way you feel? Do you find yourself more tired, more sluggish, after eating greasy meals? If so, maybe it's time to listen to your body before it forces you to. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about the changes, big or small, that can help us all move through life with strength instead of struggle. 3. Processed meats. Destroying muscle strength bite by bite. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "A man's character is his fate." And yet, how often do we forget that our choices, what we put in our bodies, how we care for ourselves, become the architects of our own future? Food, once a source of strength, has now been twisted into something that slowly steals life from within. In my younger days we ate what we grew, what we could hunt, and what came fresh from the land. But today I watch as grocery store shelves are lined with things that look like food but are far from it. And the saddest part? So many people eat without a second thought, unaware that what they consume is shaping their very existence. I think of my friend Robert, a strong man in his youth, a carpenter who built homes with his bare hands. He used to say, "A house is only as strong as its foundation," but he never realized that the same was true for his own body. Every morning, without fail, he'd start his day with bacon and eggs. Lunch, a thick ham sandwich piled high, and dinner, if it wasn't sausage, it was something from a package, something easy, something fast. "Gotta keep myself fed," he'd say, but he never stopped to wonder if he was actually nourishing himself. Years passed, and the signs crept in, slow and steady, like the wear and tear on an old wooden beam. His hands, once firm and steady, began to shake. His legs, once strong enough to carry heavy lumber, felt like they were betraying him. "It's just getting old," he shrugged, but I knew better. I saw the swelling in his ankles, the stiffness in his stride, the way he hesitated before standing up, gripping the arm of the chair like it was an anchor. He wouldn't say it out loud, but I could see the frustration in his eyes, the silent fear that he was losing control. Then came the wake-up call. One morning he stood up too fast, his legs wobbled beneath him, and he fell, hard. The doctor said his muscles were weakening, that his joints were inflamed, that his bones weren't what they used to be. Too much sodium, too many preservatives, the doctor warned. You're starving your body of the real nutrition it needs. Robert listened, but I could see the disbelief on his face. How could something as simple as the food he'd been eating his whole life be the reason his body was giving up on him? I sat with him one evening, watching the sunset from his porch. You remember building that house on Green Street? I asked. That old couple, they wanted it sturdy enough to last for generations? He nodded. Yeah, I made sure the wood was strong, the foundations solid. I looked at him and said, "Why didn't you do the same for yourself?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared into the distance, and after a long silence, he sighed. I didn't think it mattered. But it does matter. What we eat isn't just about filling our stomachs. It's about fueling our bodies, keeping our muscles strong, our bones solid, and our hearts beating without strain. Robert made changes after that. He started choosing real, unprocessed meats. He added more beans, lentils, and greens to his plate. It wasn't easy, and he'd joke about missing his bacon, but after a while he noticed something. His legs didn't feel as heavy, his hands didn't tremble as much, and for the first time in years he felt like he was in control again. So I ask you, what foundation are you building for yourself? Are you feeding your body the strength it needs, or are you quietly tearing it down, one bite at a time? Think about it, and if you've ever felt the effects of what you eat, if you've noticed stiffness, swelling, or weakness creeping in, share your thoughts below. Let's talk about the small changes that could make all the difference in the years ahead. 4. High sodium foods, draining strength from your legs. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." But what if your legs feel too heavy to take that step? What if the very foundation of your movement, the strength in your muscles, the stability in your joints, is slowly being weighed down by something as small as a grain of salt? In my day, food was seasoned with care, a pinch here, a sprinkle there, nothing excessive. But now, salt hides in everything, in cans, in frozen meals, in the so-called healthy snacks people mindlessly consume. It's a silent thief, draining strength one bite at a time. I think of my old friend Linda, a woman who once moved through life with ease, always the first to suggest a long walk through the neighborhood, always the last to sit down at a gathering, too busy pouring coffee and making sure everyone else was comfortable. But over time, something changed. She started complaining about her ankles swelling up, about a tightness in her calves that wouldn't go away. She blamed it on age, on just getting older, but I knew better. One summer afternoon, we sat together on her porch, the heat settling heavy in the air. She sighed, rubbing her swollen feet. "I don't get it," she said. "I drink water, I try to stay active, but my legs feel like they're turning to stone." I asked her what she had for lunch. "Oh, just some soup from a can and a turkey sandwich." I smiled sadly. "Linda, do you know how much salt is in that meal?" She waved a hand. "A little salt never hurt anybody, but that wasn't the truth. A little salt every meal every day, it adds up. The doctors confirmed it. High blood pressure, poor circulation. Sodium is draining the calcium from her bones. Cut back on salt, they told her. It's weighing you down." But change is hard when bad habits feel like old friends. It wasn't until a bad fall, one that left her with a fractured ankle, that she finally understood. "I always thought sugar was the big enemy," she admitted from her hospital bed. "But it was salt all along, creeping into everything I ate." She started making changes. She swapped her canned soups for homemade ones, full of fresh herbs instead of preservatives. She put down the salt shaker and picked up garlic, turmeric, and lemon zest. And though it took time, she noticed the difference. Less swelling, more energy, a lightness she hadn't felt in years. So I ask you, have you noticed how salt affects your body? The way your legs feel heavier, your energy dips, your joints ache? Have you ever felt trapped in your own body, unable to move the way you used to? If so, I urge you to think about what's on your plate. The change doesn't have to be drastic, but every step toward better health is a step toward freedom. Share your thoughts below. Let's talk about the small choices that make a big difference. 5. White bread and refined carbs. rob your muscles of strength. The great Native American leader Sitting Bull once said, "Inside of us there are two wolves. One is evil, it is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, and lies. The other is good, it is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, and truth. The wolf that wins is the one you feed." The same can be said about our bodies. We can feed ourselves strength, vitality, and endurance, or we can feed ourselves weakness, fatigue, and disease. In my younger days, food was simple, whole, and nourishing. Bread was made from whole grains, not bleached flour and artificial preservatives. But times have changed. Convenience took the place of care, and the very foods that were meant to sustain us began to betray us. I remember a man named George, a retired mechanic who used to have hands strong enough to lift an engine block. He took pride in his work, in the power of his arms, in the strength of his legs. But as the years went by, his body started failing him in ways he never expected. He wasn't just getting older, he was getting weaker. His legs felt shaky when he stood up. His energy disappeared by midday, and worst of all, his hands, the very hands that had once built and repaired, began trembling when he tried to hold a wrench. At first, he chalked it up to age, but deep down he knew something wasn't right. "I feel like a machine running on bad fuel," he said one evening as we sat outside his garage. I asked him what he ate on a typical day. "Breakfast is toast with jam, lunch is a sandwich, dinner, pasta or a roll on the side." He laughed, shaking his head. "Same kind of food I've been eating all my life." But it wasn't the same. The bread, the pasta, the baked goods, they weren't what they used to be. Instead of fueling his body, they were draining it. The doctor told him what I already suspected. His diet, full of refined carbohydrates and processed grains, was starving his muscles. Every slice of white bread, every plate of pasta, and every pastry robbed him of strength. His blood sugar spiked and crashed, leaving him exhausted. His body, desperate for nutrients, had been running on empty for years. "No wonder I feel like I'm breaking down," he muttered, staring at his hands. It wasn't easy, but George made changes. He swapped his white bread for whole grains, started eating more beans and vegetables, and replaced pasta with brown rice and quinoa. It took time, but little by little he noticed the difference. His hands steadied, his legs felt stronger, his energy lasted longer. He wasn't just surviving, he was reclaiming his strength. So I ask you, have you ever felt drained after a meal? Have you noticed your body slowing down, your energy fading, your muscles feeling weaker than they should? If so, maybe it's time to take a closer look at what's on your plate. The choices you make today will determine how strong you'll be tomorrow. Share your thoughts below. Let's talk about the changes, big and small, that can help us all stay strong for the years ahead. Your legs have carried you through a lifetime of moments, long days of hard work, joyful walks with loved ones, and the simple freedom to move without hesitation. But every step you take tomorrow depends on the choices you make today. What you put on your plate isn't just food, it's the fuel that determines your strength, balance, and independence in the years ahead. So ask yourself, is it time for a change? Even the smallest shift, a better breakfast, a healthier swap, one mindful decision can make all the difference. If this video gave you something to think about, let me know in the comments. What's one small step you'll take today? And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing you the knowledge you need to stay strong, steady, and thriving for years to come. Thank you for watching. Here's to a future of confident steps and limitless possibilities.